Hi guys, so welcome to Costuming Basics. If you're just getting started in cosplay and LARP, something you'll likely find yourself wanting to do is learning how to sew. It might be something as simple as wanting to edit something you bought, or it could be wanting to make a whole costume from scratch. Chances are though, you'll find it much easier to do with a sewing machine, whether it's one you borrowed from a friend or one you bought yourself. So today I'm going to go through the very basics of how to use a sewing machine, from threading to standard functions. So here I have a handy diagram that shows each part of the machine, and I'm sure you'll be shocked to learn that these are not actually the names. So I'll go through each piece and what it does, starting from one side and working through to the other. The main thing to note though is it's a very general overview. All sewing machines are slightly different, all sewing machines are going to have slightly different functions or different buttons in different places. You might even have different types of stitches, so just check your manual for more information. Okay, so this is my beast. I've had her for about 4 years now, and she is covered in stickers. And the most important button, the on-off button. It won't do much without that. The next one is the hand wheel. So you can use this to manually move the needle up and down, and this means if you've got a particularly thick piece of material that keeps getting stuck, you can manually turn it or unstick it using this. And if I demonstrate slightly awkwardly, see it's moving the needle here up and down. Next I have my reverse button, so I find this the best way to secure the seams is to go forward, back, forward, and then that sort of secures the stitch in place rather than trying to tie off all the loose ends afterwards. Okay, next I have my stitch dial, so I have 10 different functions on this one. It goes from sort of the basic stitches there to zigzag and to embroidery ones, which I don't really use, but it's a nice extra to have. So yeah, this is what you use to select your stitches. Okay, and down here we have the foot pedal. So this is basically your go button. The amount of pressure you apply will dictate how fast the machine will go and the speed that you will sew at. So light pressure is slow and steady, whereas pedal to the floor is sort of Sonic to the Hedgehog, scream into the void and hope things work. Along the top now you have your spool pin, and this keeps your thread in place. And next to that you usually have your bobbin winder. Now if you flick it backwards like that, you can then secure the bobbin in place, and you can wind it with the same thread that you are using to match your main stitch. And all you do is you press the foot pedal down and it will then wind your bobbin. I can't show you that because it's broken on my machine. So along here I have my tension dial, and this will adjust how tight or how loose a stitch will be. Different fabrics will have varying weights and textures, which will require different tensions to sew. If it's too tight, the fabric will pull weirdly, and if it's too loose, the seam won't be secure. So the best thing to do is to get a scrap of fabric you're using and run it through the machine, adjust it basically until the stitches look right. So these pieces here are all to do with threading, and I'll show you how to thread it up in a bit. So you sort of got a pressure disc here, sort of the thread guide up here, the take-up lever, and then it all leads through to the needle down here. So this piece here is the presser foot, and this helps you keep the fabric flat as you run it through the machine. And this lever here raises and drops the foot so you can get the fabric in and out. Underneath is the thread plate and feed dogs. This helps the fabric feed through the machine. Sometimes you do need to very lightly guide the fabric from either side, but if you pull too hard it will distort the stitches, and then the thread and the fabric will pull weirdly. And the last really important thing is the bobbin house. So I have a bit of a weird bobbin that loads from the top. A lot of machines have them on the side instead, and then you would open it up, open the bobbin, put the bobbin in there. But mine does actually come with instructions on how to load it, which is very helpful. Other things to note on machines is that some come with things like built-in light bulbs, which makes it a bit easier to see what you're doing when you're under there. Like so. Mine also, as Sarah pointed out, has a little blade on the side so that I can cut my thread as I go through. So I've got some there, and then I can just cut my thread. So now on to threading. You want to take your spool of thread, place it on the spool pin, then work it around the pressure regulator here, like that. Then you want to go down one side, down here, then back up the other, and it needs to go through the take-up lever and back down, and then mine goes sideways. Okay, and then you've got to get it through the needle, which I find is the hardest bit. So some tips for threading the needle: you want to make sure that there are no scraggly ends to your thread. Just cut the end off and make sure it's absolutely straight. Sometimes wetting it helps, so if you wet your fingers or lick the end, it can sort of help make it a bit easier to thread, a bit of lubrication. The other thing you want to do is you want to raise your needle, make it easier to get to, and then put the foot down again so you've got a bit more room to manoeuvre. And it's through. So once it's through, you can then tuck it. I've got a little sort of secure loop just to make sure that it doesn't come out. Okay, so then you need to load your bobbin. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to use a different colour to the spool thread there, just so that when we do the stitches we can show you which one's which. So I've got my instructions on how to load it. So mine goes that way. It goes. There's a little ledge there that it hooks onto, and again a ledge there that it hooks onto. And then I can just lock that in place. Okay, once you've loaded the bobbin into your machine, you then need to take up the bobbin thread, and what this does is it means that you'll then be able to do a proper stitch. So to do this you need to have a long enough thread so it's not going to come through your needle, because then you have to rethread your needle. I tend to keep hold of it just so that again it doesn't, when we're moving it, take it out of the needle. And then it's easier if you lift up your presser foot. It gives you enough room here, and then you need to turn the hand wheel to do a stitch. This is a manual stitch. What it does is it lowers this. I'll do it from this side. So it pulls. No. So yeah, then it just pulls the bobbin stitch up, and then if you pull it up there, so now you have 2 stitches on top of the machine, and then you just pull it down around the presser foot so that it is under the presser foot whilst your spool bobbin is above it. So you've got the bobbin underneath it and the spool above it. Then give yourself enough length so that when you do your first stitch, again it's not going to pull through, and then you're ready to start. Okay, so now you've got a sewing machine set up and you're ready to start stitching. So I'm going to go through a couple of the basic stitches with you. I have a short stitch, I also have a longer straight stitch, so you can see that's quite a narrow stitch and that is a longer stitch. also have some zigzag stitches. We've got narrow ones and longer ones. So again, I've got the narrow ones at the top and the longer ones at the bottom. So I've also got things for like buttonholes and that kind of thing. I've got some embroidery stitches as well. Another tip is if you want to turn corners, if you make sure that the needle is in the fabric, so you can do this with the hand wheel, then you lift this up and then you can just swivel the fabric round, put that back down, and then you have a corner. Okay, so as you can see, there's some basic stitches, some zigzag stitches, and some embroidery stitches there. Obviously my tension isn't adjusted correctly for those, but it's just to sort of demonstrate what you can do. For starting and finishing a seam, I can demonstrate that one as well. So what I do is I go forward, hit the reverse button, back, and then forward. And that produces a sort of a locking mechanism there. So you go, you start from there, you go forward, back, forward again, and keep going. So that is basics of using a sewing machine. Obviously check your own manuals because each machine is slightly different. If there's anything you want us to cover, things like overlockers, patterns, making your own patterns, that kind of thing, obviously let us know in the comments below and we'll see what we can do. Bye!